Hello, my name is Elizabeth Belzil, and I'm going to be talking about the knowledge of consumer rights in the marketplace for my presentation. I thought consumer rights was a very important thing to talk about for this presentation because we're all consumers in this world, in this economy. We affect the United States marketplace every day that we are living on Earth. And as consumers, it's incredibly important to know what our rights are like. If we ever run into a bind or even just with day-to-day transactions, it's important to know as consumers what types of things we have in our court that are working for us to make our day-to-day experience a little better. So the first thing about when we are delving into this topic is defining rights. What is a right? We exercise them pretty much every day as citizens, and they're known as entitlements to something. So entitlement meaning we have privilege to it. Just like the right to vote. So we have, as citizens of the United States of America, have the right or privilege to have a say in who is making the decisions in this country, whether it's the president, part of the Senate, local government, federal government, things like that. We do have a say. So another part of rights is they allow us to be treated in some particular way. So when we think about equal rights and civil rights, those rights are in place so that we as citizens are not maltreated. The idea is that as humans, we are all treated equal. So we don't want to be treated negatively or have laws that, what's coming to mind right now, like the old 3/5 compromise that makes someone not a whole person. We all want to be treated as human beings in an equal manner, despite the color of our skin, our religious backgrounds, all these things. Another thing that a right does is it empowers people to protect themselves in the economic marketplace. So without consumer rights, we would tend to feel a little bit skittish about speaking up for ourselves, and consumer rights really give us a backbone to put ourselves out there, to stretch our necks out when things are going wrong, to stand up for ourselves and to have a voice as a people. So legal rights of consumers. The first thing that I want to talk about is implied warranties. And implied warranties can be written or unwritten, so in a verbal form. They basically just let us know or ensure that a product is functional. So when we buy a product, we want to know that it's going to work. When we buy a vacuum, we want to know that it's going to pick stuff up off of the ground. And implied warranties is just that. So if we buy a vacuum, we want to know that it's going to pick stuff up. If we buy a pencil, we're going to want to know that it writes on paper, things like that. And implied warranties also cover the fact that the seller will repair or replace a product within the specified period of time. And the consumer definitely has the right to get a dysfunctional product or service replaced or obtain a refund money to pay. So, with implied warranties, consumers are able to either get a replacement product if the one that they have is dysfunctional, or they can get their money back and get a better product, which is very reassuring because none of us want to be stuck with something that doesn't work and have no way of fixing it. So implied warranties help consumers out in a positive way. Moving on to expressed warranties. Expressed warranties can be written, verbal, or demonstrated by sellers, which is interesting. And expressed warranties can be are difficult to destroy. So once things are in writing, sellers cannot really go back on their words. And expressed warranties are covered by both statutory and common laws, which is interesting. And they're detailed. They're not just something that say a statement and that's it, or just one line and that's it. It's incredibly detailed, and the written ones specify the name and address of the warrantor, the product and parts covered, duration of the warranty, what the warrantor will do and if something goes wrong, and who will pay for it if something goes wrong. So all of these things are covered in expressed warranties. It's kind of a go-to whenever something goes wrong with a product. Something that laid down the baselines, the guidelines of expressed warranties was the Magnuson-Moss Warranty Act. And this stated that warranties should mean what they say and that the details should be easy to understand. So it shouldn't be something in complex language. It should be something that anyone living in the United States, any citizen with a basic education would be able to understand. And it immediately lets consumers know the degree of coverage. So is this a limited warranty? Is this a lifetime warranty? That is expressed in the details. And the Magnuson-Moss Warranty Act also encourages the use of informal dispute procedure when problems arise between sellers and buyers. So if things go wrong, what's going to happen? Look at the expressed warranty and see what steps to take to start making things better. Consumers who successfully file state or federal lawsuits against warrantors may be awarded their purchase costs, attorney fees, and fees for damages under this Warranty Act, which is something that is incredibly helpful when things go wrong. The next thing I would like to discuss is statutory rights. So statutory rights are laws, regulations, and ordinances that are in place and designed to protect consumers. They are available on the federal, state, and local levels. So statutory rights, to some people, might seem like a kind of funky word or something that's very complex, but it can be on a variety of levels. So it can be up with the big guys up at the federal level, up at the state level, and in local community as well. The bottom line is that they exist for consumers, and they are explicitly stated. Statutory rights are a high demand by consumers. So even though there is an incredible list of statutory rights and what we have a rights to do in the economic marketplace, consumers are pushing for more. They're lobbying for more. And statutory rights exist for several consumer experiences in the economic marketplace, like I just mentioned. They cover the bases on things like sales transactions, telemarketing interactions, vehicle leasing, vehicle purchasing, things having to do with insurance, with debt, with credit, with airline travels, pet loss center laws, weight loss laws, privacy laws. The list can go on and on about all of the statutory rights that consumers have access to. So moving on to the moral rights of consumers. So everything that we've talked about is very explicitly stated. It's kind of more on the business side of things, and as we're going to transition here into something more on the affect side of things, if you will. So the moral rights of consumers has to deal with how consumers are treated in the marketplace, and the idea is that all consumers should have equal treatment in the marketplace. Despite economic, political, religious, racial, ethnic, gender, or youthful appearance. So whether you're young or old, no matter what religion, no matter what cultural background, the idea is that everyone should be treated equal in the marketplace, and that is a basic requirement for all consumers. Another one is that consumers should be treated courteously regardless of their intent to purchase. So if I walk into a store and I don't know whether or not I want to buy something, I should be treated courteously. So just because I'm walking in there and I don't have any money in my pocket doesn't mean that a seller should treat me any differently than someone who wants to buy the whole store. So the basic concept of moral rights of consumers is that everyone should have acceptable minimum standards of quality of goods and services. So all sellers should be able to provide this for their consumers, is an acceptable minimum standard. And this honestly can change based on location and based on where someone is living. But the idea is that the environments in which we are getting ourselves into in the economic marketplace are acceptable, and they're not malicious or intended to affect the consumer in a negative way. Another thing is that products should be safe for the consumer and for the environment. We want to be assured that a merchant is honest in every transaction. So we don't want to be lied to, obviously. It's never a fun time to be lied to, especially when it comes to spending money and getting things for our personal lives. We don't want to be scammed. We don't want dishonest sellers. We want to be assured a certain degree of privacy. So we don't want sellers, for instance, if we pay for something with our debit card, taking down our debit card number and then having access to our bank accounts. Definitely not a moral act there. So we want to know that we have a degree of privacy when we're making transactions and making interactions in the marketplace. We want to have the opportunity to compare prices and products. Something that makes this country so awesome is the fact that there's so much competition within businesses, and the opportunity to compare these competitive prices and products should be able to be taken upon at any time and place without interference or negative treatment by any seller on either side that we're considering. Something that was a stride in the right direction for consumers was the influence of President Kennedy in 1962. He drafted the Consumer Bill of Rights and established the rights for consumers to choose, to be safe, to be informed, and to be heard. So these four things are incredibly important when we think about how we interact and what we want and what we expect out of our marketplace. So obviously we just talked about competition, and we want to be able to choose between we want to be able to choose where we spend our money, if you will. We don't want to just be limited to one source. We want to be able to invest in what's best for us. We want to know that we're safe. We don't want to have to go outside and try to spend money and be surrounded by corrupt corporations. We don't want to be exposed to things that are going to harm our health or harm our environment. We want to be able to be informed. We love transparency. When we think about this is an odd example, but when we think about the tabloids, people generally love to learn about other people's lives. They love to see what's on the other side of the glass, and the same goes for us in the marketplace. We should be able to know what's going on the other side of the glass. We should be able to know things like what's in our food, nutrition facts, all sorts of things like that. We as consumers should have access to information if we want it, and to be heard. All of us have voices, all of us have opinions, and these voices and opinions ultimately affect the way that businesses are run. So we have the opportunity, we should have the right to share our thoughts. So consumer rights for everyone. Our book covers this, and it's kind of, some of it goes hand in hand with what President Kennedy set into motion, but it kind of goes a step further than that. So we have the right to choose, like I just talked about. We have assured access to a variety of products and services at competitive prices. Information. We should be given accurate and adequate information upon which to make free and intelligent decisions. So the decisions we make in the marketplace should be fueled by the information that we learn. We have the right to safety. We should expect healthy and safety and a state of positive financial well-being. And we should expect that all these things are protected. And so we have a right to voice, just like I talked about. We have the right to put ourselves out there, to make a difference, to get ourselves heard, to get our opinions heard. The right to redress and remedy. This means that we are provided a full and fair hearing in any case of dissatisfaction and complaint. And complaints are resolved in a satisfactory manner. So if we have an issue with something, we should be able to contact the right people and have a fair hearing. Environmental health. We want to be able to consume in an environmentally sound manner and be protected from the ill environmental effects in everyday transactions, such as like air pollution and fossil fuels burning and things like that. All these things that are threats to our us in our environment, we want to be able to have some sort of protection against. A right to service. We should expect convenience, courtesy, and responsiveness to all of our needs and problems. And consumer education. We should have the right to continue our education in order to enjoy the full benefit of other enumerated rights. So without education, I would not be doing this presentation. Without education, lots of us would be limited in our abilities. And consumer education is incredibly important because we have the ability to go out and learn about the things that we're spending money on. We can learn about corporations. We can learn about sellers, about merchants, about the processes. And this is an incredible thing that information is out there for us to gain. So with all of these rights that we have talked about so far, great responsibilities come with them. So being an informed and well-educated consumer is a main priority, and we need to be able to speak up when dissatisfaction and errors are present. We need to be able to take appropriate action when necessary and know our own impact in the marketplace. So we can't just know all of these things and then just sit around passively. We have the responsibility to act on what we know and to act on what happens in our daily lives. So moving on to the moral rights of consumers. So everything that we've talked about is very explicitly stated. It's kind of more on the business side of things, and as we're going to transition here into something more on the So facing consumer issues, some things that we're going to face as consumers, it's inevitable that we're going to come up upon rip-offs in the marketplace. Rip-offs are something that it's illegal. There are no specific laws saying, hey, you can't rip people off, because we as consumers have a responsibility to be informed, right? We have a responsibility to be educated, so it's on us to avoid these things on a day-to-day basis. Another thing is fraud. Fraud is not a fun thing to deal with. And not really something we ever want to run into. But sometimes it happens, and we need to know what to do in the face of it. Another thing people struggle with within the marketplace is dishonesty and deception. Corporations are not always fantastic and courteous, and they don't always genuinely care about their consumers. So we need to know what to do whenever we're faced with these things. Cautious consumerism is a solution here. So things that we can do is we can compare our experiences with others. How are others getting treated? How should we strive to improve our own experiences based on how others have interacted in the marketplace? We can try to limit our transactions with well-known reputable sellers. So if we know that there is a specific tire store that ups their prices and tells their consumers that things are wrong when really they're not, don't go there. Try to find somewhere else to go. Spend your time and your money somewhere else. Another thing that's incredibly important is to be assertive with sellers. I've caught myself doing this too, but oftentimes we're kind of passive. Like, we'll talk to people especially when telemarketers call, we'll talk and just kind of try to be polite and get ourselves out of it. But there are people out there that that identify us as pushovers and will try to hit our weak spots and carry a conversation until they get what they want out of us. We need to be assertive and be defensive of our finances and of our personal information, and just simply end a conversation instead of letting it carry on. We need to make well-educated and rational decisions. So the information is out there for us. We need to be active, and we need to get out, and we need to learn and teach ourselves what the appropriate thing is as opposed to the inappropriate thing is, and what to look out for. Because ultimately we can see these negative things coming in advance if we just pay attention. So the benefits of all this preparation. Familiarity with consumer rights helps us to do things like think clearly, to take appropriate action, and to make clear distinctions between fraudulent and honest transactions. We can't be fooled by the good deals or the perfect talk that sounds incredible and flawless from a seller. We need to consider transactions carefully before we fully commit. So if something sounds great to us, take a couple days and think about it. We always hear people say, oh, just sleep on it and then think about it tomorrow. Sleep on it for a couple days and see if it's something that's really worthwhile and worth your time. Think clearly. That's something that is so incredibly important that we skip over on a daily basis. We need to give our our decisions some time, some reason, and some serious thought before commitment. So it's incredibly important to be familiar with all of these rights that we talked about. Legal rights, statutory rights, which are legal rights, and our moral rights as well, because all of these things play together beautifully, and have individual significant roles in our daily interactions in the economic marketplace. When we make clear distinctions between fraudulent and honest transactions, like I said previously, if we pay attention, we can honestly see, we can probably predict fraudulent transactions from honest transactions. Humans have an incredible gut feeling about things, and I think that this feeling can be related when we're dealing with corporations and fraud and rip-off as well. I think we can get an instinctual bad feeling when someone is trying to cross us the wrong way, and this is an important thing to listen to, especially as consumers in the United States of America. So to kind of close up here, what do we know now as a result of this presentation? So we went over legal and moral consumer rights. Both things are active members of our daily interactions. And there are things to know and things that are very important to take into consideration when things go wrong. I know before this presentation and before taking this class, I didn't really pay much attention to consumer rights, or what it meant to be a consumer, or what it means to have an impact on the global economy. I really just didn't consider it very much, because we get kind of caught up in our own world sometimes, and it's important to think about the fact that there's more to our day-to-day interactions than we think. We now know the explicit rights that consumers have in the marketplace, and how the knowledge of rights has a positive effect on our transactions. So when we know about these rights, it gives us, like I said, a backbone. It gives us some support. It gives us a foundation to really get out there. And we're not just acting blindly. The rain is clear, and we can see it. And we can act with clear thoughts, with a clear head, and knowledge of these rights definitely makes us, or forces us to make smarter decisions, and it kind of pushes us in the right direction and helps us focus on what's important. Because if we're kind of just blinded by what's in front of us all the time, we're never gonna be able to come off scotch-free without running into any problems, without running into deceit, without running into dishonesty. And I'm not saying that knowledge puts you in a bubble and protects you from everything, but it definitely helps. It definitely kind of shoves us in the right direction and gives us an advantage. Because although the information is out there, some of us are lazy. Like, I was lazy, but once we start to learn, it definitely is a domino effect and lets us get moving and just learn more and more until next thing we know, we're a well-educated consumer in the United States of America. So all of these things have shown us how to appropriately face issues in the economic marketplace as well. So knowledge is the backbone of action, and it is incredibly important to know our rights and how they come into play every day that we are existing in this world. So thank you for listening. That is everything, and here's my reference. Good old textbook. Hope you enjoy the rest of your day.